all of you should be like speaking up whenever I ask questions, okay? Great. So this is our subject. Basically, the subject is object-oriented programming. And I hope you people have already learned about C++, right? Maybe in data structures or somewhere. The OOPS concepts somewhere else. But again, we would start from very scratch. That what are OOPS concept, because that is the subject name. That is first thing that we should know. What is an object-oriented programming? Along with it, we have to learn all of this through Java. So previously there were used to be 3 subjects. One was OOPS, maybe through C++. Then there was core Java as a subject, and then there was advanced Java. As seeing that students are able to understand all of these in one semester. So 2 years back, new grid was introduced into which all of these 3 things were fixed into this subject, and this is your OOPS subject. It contains your advanced Java concepts also, core Java, and OOPS concepts also, right? So we'll start with the introduction to Java, and then we'll move like towards the OOPS concept, and then towards more Java-based concepts, right? So to begin with, we all know that history we do not like. No one likes to read history, right? But still, we have to learn this just to come to a point that I'll certainly take you to, that why we are learning Java, why this has happened. So for that purpose, we need to know about this. I do not expect at all that you remember all these things, that Dennis Ritchie developed C language and these years or of all of those. It is just a storyline to be built upon why we are onto Java, right? So the first of all, the thing is that C language was developed in 1972 by Dennis Ritchie, and it took around 10 years to become that C language to be a most popular language amongst the programmers. So there was a time, at that time, there was no so much amount of programmers and no much about this computer science thing, right? That time it took about taken a decade to become the most popular language, and still it is. C language you must have still learned in your first semester, right? And if you look towards the package of companies, you will find C and C++ developers are still highly paid if you have those skills with you, mostly in the gaming industry, right? And even Java, when we're learning about, we'll see that some of the libraries are still written in C or C++ that we are actually using in Java. So that preface will also come through this history only. Then what happened, computer hardware went through a performance and price revolution from 1972 to 1991. So now here are 2 things. First thing is your computer from the scratch, right? We have a hardware and software. So when we are talking about any language, we are trying to create a software, and then we are willing to like that software will be running on some hardware. Okay, so both of them things has to be in a same aligned way. One good example that you can take is difference between iPhone and iOS and your Android and any other manufacturer, right? So you can understand from that point of view that iOS and the hardware of iPhone is manufactured by the same vendor, Apple, right? So they actually what they do, you can see a 2 GB RAM iPhone can perform much better as compared to some other maybe 8 GB, 16 GB Android mobile phone. Always this is a debatable topic. We can debate around it that this one is good or bad. That's a different part of the story. But if we talk about optimization and speed, we can somewhere agree that yes, iPhone provides better hardware versus software ratio we talk about. We don't have to have 16 GB of RAM in our mobile phone just to open WhatsApp or some few games, right? So the same thing is the reference. So the computer hardware went through a performance and price revolution from 72 to 91. So better, faster hardware was available at lesser price. So this thing is about, as I'm speaking today, it is about 30 years back thing. So even if today you will see and compare it to maybe your 5th or 6th standard when you people were in, if you compare up to that time until today, you will find a 6,000 rupees mobile phone has more processing capabilities as compared to maybe your first desktop that you must have purchased in your school life. So your mobile phone is much more cheaper and faster as compared to your desktop. Same was happening there. So this is a Moore's law that defines this thing, right? Demand for big and complex software exponentially increased. But with time, programmers found that programming in C became tedious with its structural syntax. So as processing capabilities were increased, so they were more into like having more complex things to be done through computers. But writing those codes through your C language was becoming tedious, right? In 1979, a new thing came into picture, that was C++. So what happened, because C program was C is a procedural language, we know, and there are loads of syntax. Even after we learn about functions and we have to write a very complex program, then there will be so many functions and variables around it that we can understand how lengthy our program could be. Just to understand this thing, once you learn C, Java language, just try to translate one advanced program, maybe from collections, into a C program, and you will yourself feel, yes, this is what we were started from, right? So these comments, what we are seeing on the screens, are basically coming out from somewhere, those who have used C very intensively, right? This is in terms of them. We cannot say that the programs which we have made in our laboratories, for example, just bring Fibonacci series, recursion programs, and all those things. We cannot compare it to that. But yes, if we have some complex program, so in Java, a simple program of collection is not complex one. That is an easier one. But maybe in 20 lines you will write that program. But if you convert that program into C language, you will feel the differences, that what all you need to do to attain that particular thing. Okay, so it was very tedious at that point of time. So what happened is, this Bajar-Trusprov developed a C++ language. So it was an enhancement to C language with included object-oriented programming fundamentals and features. So what is object-oriented programming? They just changed their perspective. Previously, we were looking at a problem in a perspective of mathematics, right? We used to have algorithm. We look at like how this problem can be solved. And just like we do something in mathematics, that was the way which we were writing programs in C, one after another, right? There was no modeling concept there. We were just writing a sequence, whatever it is, that okay, first we'll do this, then this, then this, and so on. The entire program can be classified in certain statements that we built upon. But when C++ was introduced, a different new perspective was given to all of the problems. The perspective in the sense, instead of looking at the problems in a sequential way, we thought that what this problem can be converted or seen like a real life entity. Okay, so whatever whatever operation you have to perform, you try to convert all those things into some objects that resemble somewhere around real world entities, and then you do some operations over them. That is what C++ brought into. We'll discuss OOPS in details in upcoming lectures, but that was what the different perspective was there to develop a C++ language, right? So there were again from the real life, they were inspired from real life. So we have inheritance in real life. We are the objects. We know what is an inheritance, aggregation. All of those things were coupled into one thing, and that thing was your C++ language. So that was a complete object-oriented programming paradigm. It was a paradigm shift, that instead of doing procedural programming, why don't we convert everything into an object that resembles a real entity that exists in the world? Why don't we do something like that, that we can operate upon them, right? So that was your C++ that contains your OOPS features as well, and this would be our subject. Later, even if suppose if someone knows Python, right, you must be knowing the new paradigm shift is functional programming. So today we do not talk about OOPS much, but we are more into specifically for this machine learning thing. Whenever we are talking about anything in context of machine learning, OOPS is not a good thing to learn, right? We move towards functional programming like Python or maybe Lambda in Java, those things. So that would be maybe coming in your upcoming semesters, right? So once you learn OOPS, then it would be easy to transit into functional programming. And somewhere you will feel that whatever there was in C language and few things that you have seen in OOPS, they are coming back in functional languages. So that topic we can discuss later about functional and OOPS. So again, that is a paradigm shift that maybe we'll learn during functional programming. So this engineer Patrick had become extremely frustrated with the state of Sun's C++ and C APIs, right? Sun was a company of the inventor of C++. So he was frustrated with these APIs. So he was offered a chance to work on new technology, and the Stealth project was started. A secret project, but nobody but he knows. So because of that frustration, he was frustrated by C++, even having OOPS concept inside it. So behind closed doors, a project was initiated in December 1990, whose aim was to create a programming tool that could render obsolete the C and C++ programming languages. So they want that we do not want to use these things, but certainly they knew that there is something good in C that was incorporated in C++, and similarly there was something good in C++ that needs to be taken forward. But whatever are the disadvantages, that can be removed out of it, right? So this Stealth project was later named the Green Project when James Gosling and Mike Sheridan joined this Patrick project, this person. And over the period of time, the prospect of the project started becoming clear to the engineers working on it. And no longer the aim was now to create a completely new language instead of like getting rid of C++. So what they did is they began their work on enhancing C++ and named it C+++++, right? So I hope all of you know these are the postfix and increment and decrement operators. So what this was initially what Java is today, C++++, minus minus. So there was a C language, the new version, the updated version of C was C++. They added something to C++ and they removed something out of it. So this plus plus and minus minus meant putting in and taking out stuff. So that was how the C++ minus minus things. Then he soon abandoned the name and called it Oak. There was some tree outside his office. Based upon that, he named it Oak. And later the name Java was given. So what is Java? Java is an island of Indonesia where first coffee was produced, right? So God knows why they have chosen it, the name Java. Maybe they were drinking the coffee from this particular island, whatever it is. But then the name Java was given. So on 23rd May 1995, John Gage, the director of science office at Sun Microsystems, along with Mark Anderson, the VP of Netscape. So what was Netscape? Basically, in the olden days, before this, your Safari, Chrome, or Internet Explorer, Netscape was the first browser that was used to be there, right? That was used for surfing the internet. So he announced to the audience that Java technology wasn't a myth and it is a reality. And what they did in their very first demonstration was using the Netscape browser. If you know something about applets, if you have heard of. So what they did, they transmitted information from one point to another using a Java program. So within the browser only, they integrated the compiler. So if you compare it to today, you open any tutorial point, any website, maybe Geeks for Geeks or Java T point, tutorials point, you can see that onto the terminal itself, you can write entire Java code and compile it, right? So at that time, this was a bigger thing. Today, it is not. So how it was good that two systems that were remotely connected through some communication network and were working on a browser, there they were able to communicate between two different programs. That was made possible, and that actually gave its first popularity. Right, so this was the whole storyline around which Java was built. So you don't, I know this is not to be remembered, but at least you should know. God knows when someone asks you these things. Okay, and any question is never stupid. So the initial release was in 1996. Then in 1998, Java 2 came. Then these again, like Android, you know, all of the names are based upon some food items. Similarly, these are the names based upon the version names. Kestrel. It was Java 1.3 Merlin. First standard edition came in 2004 with the name Tiger, Mustang, Dolphin, and in 2014 8 came. Today I think it's up to 15, right? So we would be learning this version, Dolphin, for our labs and even in the theory. Whatever we would be discussing up to this version, Java SE7. So make sure whenever we are working on labs on your laptop, you should be working on Java SE7 only. Why I'm saying so? Because every version will come with its own plus and minus. Some functions would be deprecated, some facilities would be older. Like in Java 8, if we move, we would be having the concept of functional lambdas. Apart from that, there would be one thing that we would be discussing like interfaces. So interface is a different definition in Java 7. It has entirely different definition in Java 8. And as we move forward, new version contains their plus and minuses. So this is the most stable version that most of the projects and you will be going to industry would be actually implemented upon. All of those codes are already written, right? So this is the most stable one. After this, obviously, whenever you will be learning functional programming, you will understand 8, and maybe in upcoming semesters, you will yourself gain insights about other versions also, right? So anybody, any questions so far? Anything maybe you want to add into it? Right. So is there anyone in the class who have gone through that white paper? I have shared you through the first announcement. Anyone who has read that white paper? Yes, Divya Som, turn on the mic, beta.
Hello, good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon, beta. Yes, what you got out of this?
So I learned about so the same thing. What were the existing problems of C and C++, and how Java removes some of that old practices and gives us better features. And from the root, it has been developed for specifically for object-oriented programming, and also with some new features like multi-threading and all that, which C and C++ could not inherently support.
Yes. So see, why I gave you this document was basically this is kind of an advertisement that was given by these Java people at the time when they were releasing it. Okay. So you must be knowing this thing. Whenever you want to know something, what are the pros and cons of this particular thing? Majorly the positive sides of it. Always watch its initial release. If you want to know about what does this Apple M1 chip contains, there would be many YouTubes you will find. But if you go to the launch event of Apple, where the M1 was launched, you can obviously see that, okay, what are the major pros that they are claiming. They would also be doing some homework at their side, giving you insights about like how do they are comparing it, up to which they are comparing. So that will tell you what was the standard there. So maybe if today you open YouTube and go to like first launch of Apple iPhone, if you go and watch the video of very first launch of any Apple iPhone, you will find that what was the first thing that they offered at that time. So then you can correlate, okay, what was the time back then. For example, Apple gave you the complete interface along with the touch screen. So first of all, they gave what we said, iPod for listening to music. Later, they offered the phone that also contains iPod inside it. So that was their USP at that time, along with the design and all of these things. So those things are really interesting to see. Whenever you want to know anything about a new things coming up, always watch its promo, right? So that tells you more about it. Later, you can dig deep into it to learn more about it. So that's why I have given you this thing. See here, what all we have discussed. We will find inside this document. This document is the best thing to understand the concepts of OOPS also. Okay, so your first assignment would be from this document only that I would be posting on Blackboard. You can see that later. But see, it's a 95 pages document, I think. But it is always a good start to start with. It is in the year October 1995. Imagine those days. See, read their pain inside this document. The next stage of the known or a completely new paradigm. This is what they said at the time. See, imagine you are a software application developer. See this. Please read it carefully. Every word matters here. Your programming language of choice or the language that has been foisted on you, you should feel the pain, right? Is C or C++. So because this is a kind of an advertisement that Java is doing to introduce everyone about Java. So they are saying that if you are a software application developer and the language that you are using or has been foisted on you is C or C++. So you have been at this for quite a while and your job doesn't seem to be getting any easier. So you were working on this language for a long time maybe, and your job doesn't seem to be getting any easier. These past few years, you have seen the growth of multiple incompatible hardware architecture. See, so this will lead us to somewhere. Multiple incompatible hardware architecture. If I talk about this today, so it's a very good time to understand this thing. If you have any interest in tech, then you will understand these days there's a battle between Intel processor, AMD processor, and Apple M1 processor. Tell me who knows about this. There is a very big debate going on that M1 is performing really better than all of the processors that all is there in the industry today. And that is all because of a very fundamental thing that they have changed, that M1 is an ARM-based processor. The processor that we use in our mobile phones. Same processor is there in the system, but it is a different architecture, completely different architecture. So there should be something. Yes, that is ARM with Divyansh, what I'm saying. And Rosetta emulator, then again a question comes. What is the difference between emulator and simulator? Tell me, Divyasam.
Sir,
Emulator
actually,
and simulator.
so emulator is emulating that architecture for which the apps are actually designed, because current applications are not for ARM based, it is for Intel and AMD based. So Apple is using Rosetta emulator to simulate that environment in which these applications can perform. It is not inherently supporting
Great.
them, but those applications will be coming in later 2021.
Yes, yes. So always remember this thing. Emulator means hardware. Always connect emulator to hardware, simulator to software. This is the simplest definition possible. So see, they are saying Rosetta emulator. That means it is mimicking some hardware there. So the hardware previously was Intel. So if I want to execute any application that was on Intel onto the M1, I need an emulator then. Getting my point? Emulator means it will behave like you are working on an Intel. If suppose I have to open this browser, this application may be a Chrome or Safari that was made to be work upon some x86 based processor, and I want it to execute on the M1 processor. So that application should feel just like, okay, I am running on x86 only. So that environment is given by emulator. So to understand this thing, you can also take into account, like you must have played some PlayStation games on PC. Have you? PlayStation games on PC. So in that time, we say we are using a PlayStation emulator because PlayStation itself is an hardware. But you must have seen aeroplane simulators, flight simulators, you must have seen, right? So those are softwares that are simulating something that maybe you will be doing, right? So from there, you can connect these things out. So we were here. So at that time, what was happening, because the computer industry was just starting in the very early stages. So that time, languages of choice were C, C++, and we were also seeing different hardware architectures coming up. So there are two different things here. One is hardware. Hardware is your processor or whatever it is. Then architecture is the bit coding level thing. How do they read the content in binary? Okay, and then comes each supporting multiple incompatible operating systems. So upon hardware also different OS are available. For example, on iPhone has its own hardware with iOS, and all of the Android phones have their own hardware with Android OS. We cannot run both of these two on different methods, right? So same problem was there at that time also, that there were different hardwares available in the market because we were in the very beginning, and different operating systems were also available for different hardware. With every platform with one or more incompatible graphical user interfaces. So first problem was hardware, second was incompatible operating system, and third one was graphical user interface. So for every platform, there is a different interface through which a user interact to it. Maybe just imagine there was no mouse. We used to enter all of the things through the keyboard. If you go into history, if you're Netflix, you should go to History 101. On Netflix, there is a series of History 101. There's one episode dedicated to this thing only, how all of these are actually evolved. So if you see that graphical user interfaces and maybe the input devices, all of these things were also different at that point of time. For example, in Mac, I have to just open something like this, right? This is a different graphical user interface. In Linux, Ubuntu, it is different, and in Windows, it is different. So same was there. At that time, also different graphical user interfaces were there through which the end user was going to connect to the operating system. And now you are supposed to cope with all of this and make your application work in distributed client server environment. So can anyone tell me what is client server environment? Anybody? Anyone? client server environment and distributed thing. Simplest example you can just understand like any website, or maybe I will say a Facebook login. Facebook login. So whatever browser you are using, the browser, right? That is your client basically. Through URL, you connect to some server. So your client connect to server and server gives you back the data, then it is displayed onto the screen. Then you say, okay, I'm sending my username and password, clicking on submit button, it is going to server, it will process it, and then it will give a new page. This is what client server architecture is. Client server environment. And how it is distributed? Distributed means Facebook do not have one server. There are many of them. And they automatically load balances themselves. The advanced distribution is today called as a cloud, right? So that time what happens was there were multiple servers, there was some middle server sitting in between that used to segregate the queries to maybe one to another servers. That was a different approach that was happening at that point of time. But because servers will also have some operating system, they will also have some user interface, they will also be written in some languages. So there could be multiple servers having different languages and operating system, and they have to work together as a one entity in the distributed environment. So the growth of internet, the World Wide Web, and e-commerce have introduced new dimension of complexity into the development process. So these were the painful words of that time from those who have written this. So the tools you use to develop applications doesn't seems to help you much. Whatever you are using today, the tools maybe there could be database tools also, language tool also. So all of those which were there, they were not helping that much. So you are still coping with the same old problems. पुरानी ही समस्याएं खत्म नहीं हुई हैं. The fashionable new object-oriented techniques seems to have added new problems without solving the old ones. Right? So they are saying that whatever was old, that has not yet been resolved, and someone just introduced C++ also. So now we also have to understand object-oriented techniques. So they added new problems without solving the old ones. So you say to yourself and your friends, there has to be a better way. There should be something good. So this line always remember in computer science. Whenever you feel anything, see, we can just start with our C programming language. Just revisit to your PPL subject, the PDS subject that you must have learned. Whenever you see there's something that you are doing repetitive, there is always an alternate to this. Yes or no? First of all, you learned about like only having constant in the program. So that was not solving your purpose. So someone told you, okay, there are variables to do this thing. Maybe before that we can say printf. So printf is a function that itself do maybe many number of lines. So there is something that we can directly use in our program. Okay, we use printf. Whatever you want to print, we will just call a function called as printf and we will print onto the screen. Then we said, okay, I have to create many variables. How to create many variables at once? So it was a problem. Solution came as arrays. Right? Then someone said, okay, I got arrays, many variables, but all of them are of same type. What to do now? Then the solution came as structure. That okay, you can create a structure that can contain heterogeneous variables. Then someone said, okay, I have to repeat my code again and again. I have to take n number of inputs. What to do? So the problem solution came out as for loops. So every time, whenever you are seeing something that is being repetitive or getting complex, so there has a better way. Always look to this question. There has to be a better way, and it is always there. Whatever problem you will be facing, there are maximum chances that someone has already faced it, and there is a good way to do that particular thing. Never think that whatever you know, that is sufficient. This was the time 1995. Today we are in 2021. So things are changing very rapidly. So we should never estimate ourselves that we know everything. Whatever we know, maybe whatever we would be writing, that is obsolete now. There should be something better way to do this. So they also say in the same way, the better way is here now. And there is a better way. It's the Java programming language environment, Java for short, from Sun Microsystems. And now they are saying, imagine if you will, this development world. First thing, your program language is object oriented, yet it is dead simple. So this thing happens maybe to your seniors also, when someone says, okay, tell us the features about Java. So they just cram these things, simple and object oriented and platform independent. So you will get all of your answers there in this document. So first point, what it says. So if someone says you why Java is simple, can anyone answer me now? Why is Java simple? Why they are saying it is simple? You will find this, like in my slides also you will find, see, features of Java. First is simple. How you can say it is simple? No, Manikant. This is a different property that it can run different machines. We are just talking about the very first. Simple. Features of Java. It is simple. How it is simple? What is the definition of simple? Got rid of pointer structure or complex practice of C, less complex. No. See, the answer is, that's why I gave you this document. Again, this was the software's burden. They were using C, C++ that time. So there was no new language imposed upon them. It was very easier as compared to your C++. The programmers of that time, they know C, C++, like you people do right now. So it is very similar in certain fashions like C, C++. That's why they are saying it is simple. If someone do not know C, C++ and I say, okay, Java is a very simple language, so it would not be the good thing to say to them. Getting my point? So it is in context to that particular time, the people who were using it. This document says that Java is simple. We are saying it is object oriented. Still it is dead simple. Why? Because you already know C, C++. We have removed something, C++, minus, minus. We have removed something, whatever was very complex for you. So it is still object oriented. It is dead simple. So they are just trying to make a way out to the developers who were building in C, C++. That's why they call it simple. Okay, so this is how you should know why they have written it simple. So now you can understand all of these things, whatever we are writing here, they are not answers of simple. It can run on different machines, object oriented, got rid of pointers. No, simple because if I know something prior, anything coming new, it is simple for me because I know something, the background of it. That's why it is simple, right? Second advantage is object oriented. It is also object oriented language. There is a feature because I'm not working on a procedural language now. I am working on the object oriented language. So these are the two features. Then your development cycle is much faster because Java is interpreted. The compile, link, load, test, crash, debug cycle is obsolete. So remember your C, C++ days, what you used to do? First of all, you say gcc a.c. So this is compile, first stage. Then when you say /a.out, then all of this used to happen. Linking was done, loading was done, maybe then you test, then crash, then again open your code like vi.a.c, debug it, then again repeat everything else. So this is now obsolete. Now you just compile and run. Once it is compiled, you can directly run. All of this is taken care by someone that we'll discuss later. So here is a term interpreted. So this was the term that you must have learned in your first semester. Translators. They are of two types. Interpreter and compiler. Can anyone explain me what is the difference between interpreter and compiler? Anyone? Difference between interpreter and compiler? Interpreter does it line by line and reports error as and when encountered. Okay. Compilers? Who will answer? Gaurav Makwana. Turn on the mic, beta. Gaurav?
Yes, sir.
Yes, beta. Tell me, what are compiler and interpreter?
सर इंटरप्रेटर सर लाइन बाय लाइन सर कोड को मशीन लैंग्वेज में कन्वर्ट करता है सर एंड कंपाइलर सर पूरे पहले कोड को सर गो थ्रू करता है उसमें उसके बाद पूरा कोड को कंपाइल करके मशीन कोड में कन्वर्ट करता है सर
Okay, which one is good out of these two?
सर इसका तो मुझे पता सर। सर मेरे हिसाब से सर इंटरप्रेटर ज्यादा अच्छा है सर, क्योंकि वो लाइन बाय लाइन जाएगा सर, हाथ में एरर बता देगा अपन को।
अच्छा, anyone else who disagrees, Gaurav, that interpreter is not good, compiler is good? Anyone? Which one is good, compiler or interpreter? Lakshapant?
Yes, sir.
Yes, beta. Which one is better, compiler or interpreter?
Sir, interpreter is better because it gives all the errors in line by line. So we do not have to wait for the whole code to finish to find the line, find the error in the starting lines.
But here see it is saying now you just compile and run. It is
Yes,
saying
sir.
compile and run.
Yes, sir.
And see what was used in C language. What we used? It was a
Sir,
compiler or
compiler.
interpreter.
Sir,
We
compiler.
used compiler, right?
Yes, sir.
It is also using compiler.
Yes, sir.
And you are saying interpreter is good. So they should have opted for interpreter instead of compiler if interpreter was good.
Sir,
Yes
but
or no?
interpreter takes more time than compiler as compared to compiler. The time dependency is more.
So which one is good then? Which is faster,
Sir, like,
compiler or interpreter?
sir, faster will be compiler, but like if we see na ki matlab line by line, तो वो I guess interpreter is better in that way. मतलब like both has
Exactly.
advantages and disadvantages.
Yes, this was what I was just expecting to listen. This is the thing that we should understand. Both have their pros and cons, right? So what
Yes,
Java
sir.
provided us is the best of both the worlds.
Yes,
So
sir.
it has interpreted and compiled also. So first let me cover this thing. What is the difference? A real life example, if can you give me anyone? What are interpreter and compiler? How they are good and bad? Any real life scenario? Okay, I'll give you a task for 26th January, right? Apart from Kisan Rally, there would be Republic Parade also. Okay, and you will notice one thing there on the Republic Day or whenever there is some speech, Prime Minister would be speaking there onto the dais, and you will find a translator onto the news if you watch Doordarshan, and that would be a translator for deaf and dumb people. Have you seen it? Whatever Modi ji would be speaking, there would be one lady or a man standing there who would be doing some sign language. So what we will call them? That is a translator. Getting my point? That is a translator that converts some high level language, in this case that is English, to some low level language, whatever they can directly understand. That is what a translator will do. Okay. What we will call that translator? We will call it interpreter or a compiler. So the designation of that particular individual is basically the interpreter. We call them interpreter because as soon as suppose Modi ji says, okay, wahan pe bomb phata, then they would just do it like the same. Whatever he says, they will do some sign language for it, line by line. Okay, if there is some mistake in real time also, that would also be transmitted. Maybe after that, someone will say sorry, interpreter will also say sorry. So it happens to be in real time. What could be the example of compiler in the same example? So this is real time. We are seeing the example of interpreter. What could be the example of compiler in the same example? Exactly, the news article, right? So if you read, if your this lecture goes for 1 hour, you will have to watch this interpreter for 1 hour, and then you will come to know what all is happening there in real time. But you have to wait till 1 hour. What compiler will do, next day morning you will just read a newspaper. In the entire newspaper there would be one news that would be written, okay, कल सुबह इतने बज के इतने मिनट पे झंडा फहराया गया, उसके बाद मोदी जी ने ये कहा, and that's it, full stop. So what is that? That is a compiled news. Only the most important things are given to you, rest irrelevant things are removed from it, so that your time is saved. You don't have to watch it for 1 hour. You are watching maybe article, maybe after 1 hour, you'll just take some notes out of it, what happened there. Like in this class might happen, 2-3 students are absent, they will call one of you that what happened in the class today. Kuch nahi hua, finished, right? This 1 hour session is gone, nothing happened at all. So that is what is compilation all about. So it saves your time. So if we talk about in context of time, then we can see compilation is better, right? Because we got something compiled. We just have to read it and we believe it. Read and believe. Because if this news was from like a WhatsApp news, you see, there are many things. There are also compiled news. But if you watch them, maybe you will go to some other world, right? There are different kind of news that come across WhatsApp. We don't know from where they are developed, but they are there. So we have to get it from some reliable resource. Then only we say, okay, I saved my time because I believe on this news, right? But it saved my time somehow. On the other hand, interpreter was real time. They took 1 hour, but they were giving me instant information. There was no latency at all. Whatever has to be done has been done previously. So maybe after 10 rehearsals, anything being done, we see, okay, this will not create any error now. Then if we know anything that do not create any error, then we can make it happen in real time. See, one good example of this could be an extempore. Someone says, okay, speak on this topic. You will just, whatever will come to your mind, you will speak it out, right? That would be some sort of an interpretation. Whatever was in your mind, whatever preparation you had, you are just delivering it. But if someone says, okay, you have to give a speech on this topic after 3 days, maybe you will first of all gather some sources, write an article out of it, read it, cram it, practice it, and then you will interpret it from your mind directly to the audience. And that would look like that, okay, so much amount of data you are having. Which one is better in these two cases? Extempore or a compiled, prepared speech that you are delivering? Which speech would be more impactful? Tell me. The compiled speech, right? So we waste our time. Whatever errors could be there in the extempore, those all errors can be resolved during compile time, right? So in C program, whenever we write a program that was compiled, so if there was an error, do not create an object file and we debug it to get a correct output out of it. Same happens here. So whatever debugging you have to do in your code, you do it, compile it. Once it is compiled, once you have made your speech ready with you, now you can claim that this is error free. This can be delivered as it is, no problem at all. And now it will be delivered in real time. So this is what Java supports. Java says, compile your program like this, maybe a.java. It will give you some file that is a class file. And then you will interpret it. So first you write it, rest assured that, okay, everything is working fine. But while executing, you will do it in the real time through interpreter. And that is what they say here, that your life cycle is much faster because Java is interpreted. So whatever you used to do, this link, load, test, so everything is done in the compile time only when you are writing your code. Whenever you are writing a code, there is never in hurry that you have to finish this code you have to finish it as quickly as possible. Development is always done at a pace, at your own pace, whatever you have, right? So you can just debug whatever you want during compile time. Once it is compiled, it is given to be executed. And that time it uses. So that's why it is a mix of both the worlds. Whatever features of interpreter are used here, features of compiler are used here, right? So we will continue this session in the next class. I have one assignment for now. In 10 minutes after that, I again have a class.